Chelsea Handler. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Oh, likewise. I'm so excited to be here with you.
It's going to be fun. So we're going to get to a lot of fun stuff, everybody. I promise, like Fox and Trump and all sorts of stuff. Marjorie Taylor Greene. But I wanted to start with something serious because there's serious stuff going on. So you've been very vocal about having had abortions in the past, and you've been very vocal about your support. Look at her pen. If you can't see her pen,
bands off our bodies.
Bands off our bodies, yes. So as you thought about coming to Texas, a place where there is a lawsuit trying to take away access to one of the ingredients in the abortion pill, where there are vocal advocates against abortion in leadership, did you think twice about coming to Texas for South by Southwest?
No, I almost wore 2 pins, actually. I didn't think twice about coming to Texas because I understand the value of coming and, being a voice for people and representing the people who feel the same way that I do,
Yeah.
Which is to leave us alone and leave our bodies alone. Which is very obvious. So the fact that we even have to have this conversation at this time in our lives or at this period in history is really so stupid and such a waste of time when we could be focusing our efforts on homelessness and healthcare and all of the other things that are incredibly important to people and preventing people from living fuller, wholer lives. So yeah, I'm a very big proponent of Planned Parenthood. I like to talk about it a lot. My family, when I first was very public about my abortions, were like, can you just tone it down a notch? And I was like, no, I'm not gonna tone it down a notch because I'm not fit to be a parent, And I know that about myself. And me not having a child and making that decision is a decision everyone has the right to make for themselves. So I look at all of this as just another waste of our time. It's a waste of our efforts. It's a waste of everyone's energies. And it's really disappointing that we're still continuing to have this conversation, but without people being vocal about how beneficial and important it is, then people lose their voice. And so I always say, when people say you're loud, we get it, you're banging the same drum, I'm like, it's not loud enough because we're still talking about it.
So yes, thank you for that. So for the women out here, I was telling Chelsea backstage that my sister wears sweatshirts sometimes to parks with her kids and our kids that say everybody knows somebody who's had an abortion on it, so you have to be vocal. That's my example in my life. But for women in this room or women watching who are kind of freaked out and scared right now, what would you tell them they should do in this moment?
Well, I think that you have to understand that it's not this moment is important and it isn't important. This moment doesn't define the rest of the history of this world or this country. You have to stay strong and adamant about fighting, and sometimes it's exhausting, you know what I mean? Being a public person and or being an activist or being politically active can be really tiresome, and that's okay too. You can take breaks when you're tired, but you can't ever let them beat you. You can't ever just say, I give up, because there's too many women out there that need our help, that need avenues to get abortion and healthy and safe, well, not healthy, but safe abortions. You know what I mean? We need access to health care. So you can't give up. You can take a beat, but you just have to, be indefatigable in your efforts. So
be indefatigable. There you go.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it. Be indefatigable. Now, you've talked a lot about humor as a way to kind of address lots of things happening in the world and how you don't have to be racist and sexist to be funny. I love when you say that.
Yeah.
Is there a way on an issue like abortion to be funny?
Well, yeah, anything can be funny, you know what I mean? After a certain amount of time. It's not that you don't want to make the mistake of looking at it lightly. It's not a light decision, obviously. It's not like I'm using, or I've ever used abortion as birth control. I made some bad decisions when I was a young kid, and I haven't made them again since because I learned my lesson. And so it's not to be treated lightly in the sense that you're like, oh, I'm just going to get, my punch card filled because I'm getting another abortion. No, that's not how to, talk about the situation. But it's also not the opposite. It's not as serious as right-wing Christians make it out to be. A person is not a person until they are born. That is what I believe. And additionally, if you care so much about children's lives, then there are a lot of other things we could do to be protecting them once they get here.
That's true. We can name a few of those. So I'm launching a show on March 19th on MSNBC at noon Eastern time. Everybody tune and watch. Make a calendar invite.
Yes, I will be watching.
And we have some great guests for the first show, which we haven't announced yet. So I'm going to announce them here today. We have Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Awesome.
We have Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And for all of you out there who are also scared about guns in our country, they're trying to get legislation through Michigan to do more for gun safety. So that's exciting. And then Mayor Eric Adams of New York City. So those are our three guests, three big Democrats, big names.
Yes.
You've prepared for a lot of interviews.
Oh.
Do you have any advice for me? Things you want to ask them?
I always try to find some sort of, when I interview people, I always just try and find some commonality between that person and me. You know, as human beings, we share a lot of interests, dislikes, likes. So that's always how I get in, especially if I feel like someone might be nervous or, not feeling very comfortable. I think it's our job as
How do you make them feel comfortable?
Do
you make a joke?
Yeah, I'm a little self-deprecating. I make sure they know that this is more of a conversation than maybe a straight up interview, that it's a back and forth, and they can feel free to also kind of ask questions to me if they want, or I always find that sharing your own experiences helps people like loosen up and relax, but you're on a political platform so people know what they're coming for, and their job is to speak, so they should get it fucking right.
No. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Anything on your mind you want me to ask any of them?
Hakeem Jeffries. I love Gretchen Whitmer. She's a badass. I've hung out with her and campaigned for her before. What she's been through in the state of Michigan and the stuff that she's had to tolerate really gives women a good name.
Yeah. She's a badass.
She's somebody I definitely was celebrating on International Women's Day.
Yeah, me too. I love it. Now, before you do your shows, I think if I were to have a nightmare where I'd wake up in a cold sweat, it would be doing an hour-long comedy routine to try to make people laugh. So, do you have any pre-routines you do, or anything that kind of you get ready for the moment?
I try and get my, I'm very, I was listening to an interview I did the other day, and I said, so many times that I'm trying not to say that, and I just realized I said it 3 times. So
yeah.
I try to have my act together. By the time you film a stand-up special, you have to have done it so many times, practiced it so many times, and I'm at the age in my life where I know not to mess around, to actually be prepared.
So do you practice it? Do you go through the whole thing in front of a mirror? How does it work?
No, I would never do that.
I don't know. I might do that.
Well, if you have an hour-long monologue, well, you have it in your head. By that time you do 150 shows, you've cemented it to memory. But when you're doing it the first time, like I'm about to start a new tour, and I don't have an hour yet, I have an idea and a germ of what I'm going to do, but I'm going to take about 16 shows, warm-up shows at comedy clubs to get that hour together. You kind of get a germ of an idea, and mine is my childhood, because when I was born, I was like this. I was loud, and
you came out this way.
Yeah.
You are a Pisces. I don't know what.
Oh yes, I am.
Know.
I didn't know.
Is it creepy? I know that.
Yeah, it is actually.
Kind of. It's a little creepy. Okay, there you go. Could continue.
You're born this Pisces. I don't even remember what I was saying. I don't know.
Do you have any things you do?
Preparation. I just try to be centered, and I meditate a lot. Yeah.
I've become a new meditator.
Oh yeah, how's it going?
Good. It's very head clearing. You feel like it's a little hippie-ish, but it's actually very clears your head of craziness and makes you a better person, I think.
It's a good setting to set yourself up for the day. Like if I wake up, I'm like, hey, I don't want to be a bitch today, I am one, and I would like to be nicer to people. Yeah. So I do it more of
Do you become less of a bitch from meditating?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
It's cumulative. If you do it every day, and you don't have to be doing it the right way. Everyone's so worried, because you talk about dropping your thoughts and you're not thinking, and you're only thinking about the breathing, and that's very hard to do. So anyone here who is a new meditator, don't worry about that part. Just worry about giving yourself the time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, to sit with yourself. And the intention is just being like, I don't want to be reactive. I want to be calm. I want to be loving. And I want people to feel better after they've been interacted with me, not worse. Because I can have that impact on people.
We all can.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have incense and an Om pillow.
No, I don't do any of that shit.
Yeah, you don't need that stuff. Okay, So I watched your special recently, and I am the mom of a 4 and 7-year-old. So part of it, I was feeling a little trauma about the fact that I don't remember the last time I woke up at 10 a.m. I don't know what that's like. I felt a huge amount of jealousy. If you haven't watched it or haven't seen this, you've been very outspoken about deciding not to have kids. Of all the things you've been outspoken about, why did you choose to be outspoken on that issue?
I just feel as a woman that it is so boring and annoying to constantly be asked about when you're going to have a baby as if your value, or be married, as if your value is...
There's some big fans in the back there.
Well, I mean, it's just so true. It's like, it's such a boring question. And for anybody out there who asks that question, stop yourself the next time, because we don't want to fucking hear it, you know? I'm not getting married, and I'm not having a baby, and I feel great about it, and it just devalues women to act like to pretend, or kind of, you know, the way that our society is set up, structured, is this idea that we haven't reached our
maximum potential
unless we're married and have babies. And I disagree with that. That's great if that's what you want to do. But for those of us who choose another path, we're contributing it to the world in many, many other ways. And one is by not leaving such a huge carbon footprint. You know, a child is a hot mess, okay? That's not helping the climate. And if you hadn't noticed, the climate is in trouble.
I can confirm children are hot messes. The other, even though I have kids, what I really related to this, because for anyone who's a mom out there, are there moms out here in the audience? Yes, okay. So
There's two.
There's two.
I draw a very specific crowd.
That's right. One of the things, even if you've had kids, people get very judgy about is how you gave birth to those kids.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't give birth naturally, and I had 2 C-sections, people will be like, I'm so sorry. It's like, why are you sorry? I have 2 healthy children. Or like how you're raising your children, how you're raising your children if you're working, you're staying at home. There's so many levels of judgment on women that I appreciate you did that. So now you had a lot of strong reaction, in the room, to what you said, how vocal you've been about not having kids. What have you heard from people about it?
Right-wing media and like conservatives, or like, any lifestyle that's free, or where a woman shows like that she can't have a good time in life, or is having a good time, for not having children, or because of not having children, that it's selfish. It's like, actually, a lot of people who have children are being selfish because they're not really thinking through what kind of parent they're going to be. I did think about that and realized it wasn't a match. Children don't respect me, and the feeling is mutual. And I knew that wouldn't be my role. But additionally, just to piggyback on what you just said, yeah, you're shamed immediately. You have a baby, and then if you're not using if you're using formula, if you're breastfeeding, there is so much shame in that game. And it's like, instead of women coming together, and of course, there are both sides of the coin. Women are supportive of each other in many respects. But I think as a society, what we've all been learning in the last 5 to 8 years, especially, is how much pressure has been put on us by each other, by other women, because that's the way we see it. It's like, this is what we're supposed to be doing, and our value is to shrink ourselves and not be loud and not be opinionated and to agree with men and don't ruffle the feathers and be a guy's girl, All of that is just horse shit. We can accomplish everything we want in life with the goals that we have for ourselves. And one of the things that I really take a lot of pride in is I'm an aunt to 8 nieces and nephews, and I crush that. I am the best aunt.
A killer aunt.
Yeah, I crush that role, and that's my role. And because I don't have my own children, I'm able to give to charities, to help other children that are less fortunate in this world, because I don't have my own little hub at home that I'm, obsessing over. I'm able to spread out that philanthropy and that humanity, and that's not something that should be looked over. That's a contribution, to many people's lives. So I think it frees you up to do many other things.
Yeah. Now, one of the other areas where women can be a little judgmental is in work environments, I've found. And I was curious for you, because you are, trailblazer is such like an old school term, but you are. You were the only female late night host at the time of Chelsea Lately. How have you found other women to be in the world of comedy?
Well, right now is a good time in comedy because now we've all come to Jesus. Everyone's like, okay, we got to be there for each other. But I remember coming up and people would always ask me questions like, what's it like to be a female comedian in a man's world? Because you have all these other male late night hosts. And I never thought about it that way. But what I did remember was, because you're just doing what you love. Like, I'm a comic. Getting your own TV show was a huge home run. I'm like, this is a party. Like, let's have a great time.
I get to do this every day.
Yeah. But I did notice a lot of people, in positions of power, females specifically, when I was coming up, which was 20 years ago, that were like the women I'm talking about that are not supportive. They weren't other comedians per se, but they were women in positions of power at networks or comedy clubs that would those were the people that were holding me back and didn't like me because I was too cute or because of this or because I dated this guy or whatever. Like, I would get all this feedback, and I remember thinking, what kind of, of course women aren't into being comedians because this is how we're being treated by the other women that are technically in this business. So I made it my personal business when I did Chelsea Lately to make sure that there were as many, if not more, women on every show, in the office, just out of what I had experienced, And so now I feel like everybody kind of is more on that path. We understand how important it is to get the support of another woman, how important it is to pave the way for other people and to help people who are on their way up, who need a leg up. And not just women, any other community that's marginalized, As a white woman of privilege, it's like, it's my duty to make sure that I'm giving opportunities to other people. Especially when I've just hit the jackpot,
Especially when you're crushing it. Help people along the way. It's really powerful to hear you talk about that. I mean, it's been very similar for me in politics, where people always say, if there's more women, all problems will be solved. And I hope one day that will be the case. But my experience has been similar to yours, where I have had many women who have risen and then pulled the ladder up instead of helping me along the way. But it impacts you, as it has you, in a way where you want to help other people. And let's hope that that's how things change.
And I think that's just part of, it's not a zero-sum game. Like, there's not only room for one person. The more we succeed, the more we all succeed. And that's a good lesson for everybody to understand, because there's this zero-sum game mentality, that a lot of even straight white guys have, complaining about the moment we're in. Like, when is it going to be over? It's going to be over when you shut up and stop fucking complaining about it. Just move on. Let's move on to the next phase. We don't want to be stuck in cancel
when we get
culture
paid equally,
either.
it can be over a little bit for a minute.
For starters, but so it's just, I feel like resisting change is the opposite of what everybody needs to do. It's okay. Everyone's going to be okay if we just all move together and act in kindness, generosity, and share. We can share.
Yeah, you don't have to be blocking out the sun from other people. That's a good way to live.
It's funny, actually, that you say that, because on Chelsea Lately, it was the first show, really, or one of the only shows where you had comedians sharing space, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about the job of a stand-up comedian, you're on stage with a microphone alone, and no one else is allowed to talk.
Yeah.
So to put comics on a round table where they have to stop, listen, comment, was interesting, because a lot of comics aren't very good at that. They're only good at and then that's it. And if you ask them a question, they're like, what? That's not part of the routine. So it was a good exercise in that too, sharing the light, like using it as an example, that show, of saying, yeah, this is my show, I can make it whatever I want, but instead I want us all to be up here taking some of the spotlight. And I feel like that's the best way to go through any endeavor in life, whether it's professional or personal. Nothing is always all for you. Like, I don't like that, I'm gonna take everything.
So do you think that the comedy world has changed over your career? It sounds like you were alluding to it has changed a bit.
I think so, yeah. I think the young comics that are coming up now, the ones that I know and interact with, there's so many more women, and they're supportive, and the competitiveness there's not an edge to it anymore. It's healthy competition instead of nasty competition.
That's good. Good direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's worth a clap. There's some male clappers over here. We're gonna applaud that. Okay, so one of the segments we're gonna do on the show is something we're calling the weekend routine, because one of the things I found in politics, and probably I'm guessing you would say this is true in your life and the life of public people too, is that people are often caricatured for good or for bad, right? You can only understand a sliver of a person. We only have the capacity to put people in a box, and we're gonna try to really get to know people a little bit better and share a little bit about their lives. So one of the first people we talked to is this young congressman, Maxwell Frost. He's the first Gen Z congressman. If you don't know him, you will know him. I promise you. He's going places. And I wanted to play a little clip of that just to give people a preview. And then I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions to test them out to see what you think of them. So I think we have this clip. Let's hope. So when you come into a store like this, what's the first thing you do?
I start out like one of the first bins I see or first area. So,
deciding where to begin.
I'll come over here and I just start looking, and we'll just look through and see if there's any artwork that I like or anything that catches my eye.
Is there an album that you are looking for, the holy grail of albums?
It changes a lot depending on what I'm looking at. I've been looking for a specific pressing of Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys that I haven't been able to find. So I'm always kind of on the lookout for that. One of the cool things about vinyl you don't really get with streaming these days is like you could really appreciate the artwork. And it's the first thing you see.
Is that what attracts you to vinyl over just streaming music? The artwork and the experience of it?
I would say. Just, it's a whole thing, right? And it forces people to appreciate kind of a whole body of work versus kind of picking the song you like or the single you like.
So he's clearly a huge music fan, which most people wouldn't know that much about him. He actually played in a band during the 2012 Obama inauguration, and it's online, and Obama's dancing, not very well, I think I can safely say, but that's kind of how he got started. He's also a huge gun activist. So we're just trying to get to know people a little bit. You never would guess that about him. So I'm gonna ask you a few rapid fire questions.
Yeah, I find that interesting. Thank you. Yeah, okay, yeah.
More to come. So when you wake up on the weekend, what's the first thing you do?
Meditate. I meditate first thing in the morning. Before I check my phone, I meditate. And then I check my phone.
Do you set a timer when you meditate, or how do you do it?
I do like a guided meditation, like on Chopra app or Headspace, like 20 minutes.
Okay, that's good. 20. I do 20 minutes as well. It's a good amount of time.
It's hard to not check your phone when you wake up in the morning, and that's why I do it, because I like the habit of not being so reliant on that,
That's very good. I time mine, and then I do look at my phone, and then you're like, what's on Twitter? What is that? That's not what you're supposed to do. So follow Chelsea, don't follow my approach. Are you a coffee drinker?
I don't drink coffee, no.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of energy, so
it's
it's not really an issue.
It's true. I'm impressed with that. Do you tea, juice, water?
I have these little natural. They're by this brand that I have. These guarana, it's like natural caffeine shot. So I take one of those in the morning. It's got 65 milligrams of caffeine or something. I don't know if that's a lot or not.
That's not a lot. No.
Oh, it's not. Okay, well then that explains why they're not working. So.
Or you don't need them. It's all good.
I don't need them. I've never been a coffee drinker. I'm not into heat. As soon as I drink something hot, I start sweating. When I was a little girl, when I used to eat soup, I would have to take my top off to eat the soup because I would just start dripping, sweating, and I love soup. I love clam chowder. I grew up in Martha's Vineyard in the summer. And my brother one year, we were going into Eggertown because I wanted clam chowder.
Yeah.
And my brother
place for clam chowder.
Was taking me to the quarterdeck, and I was 9 or 10, so I had little buds that were coming in. And I remember my dad saying to him, she can't go into town anymore topless. She has got to put a shirt on. And my brother's like, she's not going to like that. And I was like, what did Dad say? He's like, you got to wear a top. I'm like, why? He's like, don't worry about it. My brother wasn't going to have the conversation with me. And we went into town, and we went to the quarterdeck. I got my clam chowder, and I went to start taking my shirt off before we ate it. And my brother's like, you can't do that. Dad doesn't want you taking your shirt off anymore. And I was like, well, how am I going to eat the soup? And he's like, he said, you have to go in the car. If you want to take your shirt off, you can sit in the car and take it off, but you can't be in public anymore. And so I was in the car, topless, eating my soup, and my brother, who's 19, had his body up against the window. I was like, this isn't a good look either, okay?
No,
I mean, if you think you're protecting me, you look like a child molester right now. So yeah.
Soup,
So
no,
that's why I don't like coffee. It's hot.
It's real. I love it. Although for your birthday every year, you do kind of a topless skiing
I do.
thing.
I ski in my bikini. Yeah, sometimes I've been topless. This year I had a little bandeau bikini on. It's exhilarating. I love the cold. I'm an ice person, not a hot person.
Is there soup after the skiing, or is that not a part of the birthday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already naked, so why not?
Why not have the soup at that point?
Exactly.
You can have your clam chowder. No one's worried about it. Okay, if you open your fridge, what's in there?
Oh, lots of beverages. I have like every flavor of sparkling water. I love flavored water. I don't like straight up water. There's nothing more boring to me than like a bottle of Dasani lukewarm temperature water.
I'll just like knock this water off.
I couldn't, especially without ice. If it's not cold, I can't drink water. So everything in my refrigerator, it's mostly liquid based.
Yeah.
There's a variation. There's some healthy lemonade. There's some healthy orange juice. There's healthy blah, blah, blah. And then pretty much I eat like eggs, turkey, and arugula. That's pretty much.
Arugula.
Yeah, that's pretty much what consists in my refrigerator.
This is a really big day for arugula, I think.
Is
for
it?
That. I think so. You're endorsing it. Okay, you're a big reader. That's a part of your, as I've read. If you haven't, you talk about this a lot. So if you haven't seen, you love to ski, smoke weed, read books.
Read books. My 3 passions.
Wash and repeat, I think. Are you reading, do you have a favorite book or a book you're reading right now?
I'm reading right now Asymmetry. It's about...
It's so good. Lisa Holiday. It's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about this woman who, it's a novel, but she had an affair with Philip Roth when he was 72 and she was 25, so that's fun. And I read the same book.
It's a big visual there.
I read the same book, and it's a fictionalized version of their relationship, so it's fascinating. But I read the same kind of book that J.D. Salinger's girlfriend wrote about him, which was called Somewhere in the World or something like that. A lot of these older authors, like younger women. I guess that's a theme that we're dealing with. And I'm just trying to figure out what that means. Does it work for us too? Like when we get older, are we going to like younger men? Because I'm not into younger men now. And I'm wondering, will that change as I get older? Is it like hanging on to your youth? I'm fascinated by that dynamic on both sides. Why the woman is interested and why the man is interested.
Yeah.
It's
interesting. That book has a twist to it. I'm not going to give it away.
Oh, it does? Okay. Well,
good.
I'm reading that, and then I'm reading another book that my friend just wrote called The 7 Deadly Sins, Elise Lonin. It's not out yet, but she sent me an advance copy, and that's just all about the history of patriarchy and how we've had these ideas in our head and how we live in a capitalistic society and why we feel such need to earn, move, and, that we've lost the art of sitting still and really reflecting. How often do you sit down and think about your day? You're moving through your day. You're like, and there's a lot of value that comes with really thinking about what you're doing and spending your time wisely. There's a great book I read that was called Less, I think. It was about doing less better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved that. It was like, stop juggling 18 things because you're doing all of them in a mediocre way when you could be doing less better. And I thought, that really struck me because then the integrity of your work kind of rises. And when you're focusing on 1 or 2 projects at a time, it's much more beneficial, or I guess the work has a higher quality than I think when you're doing too many things at one time, right?
And there's an addiction to it. I mean, in Washington, D.C., it's like the art of let me compete to be how busy I am. I'm so busy, I'm doing all these things and juggling. Now, you were telling me your schedule, you kind of plan it so that you have a little space to kind of recover in between shows or big launches. How have you learned to do that over time?
I just get burned out, like any of us. When you work really hard, and I go at everything like hard, and so I go at my downtime hard too. I'm very into sleep. I'm very into vacationing. I tour for 2 months, and then I take a month off, and then I go back on the road for 2 months, and then I take a month off. I try and keep everything balanced because I've done it all badly before, and I know that requires me to take a year off. You know what I mean? And I don't want to do that again. I want to be able to be consistent in what I'm putting out. So it's just learning about yourself and what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I love downtime. I think when you're in this business and you're a celebrity and there's a lot of stuff that revolves around you and your world, it's nice to not have that be the only thing in your world and to have hobbies and things that have nothing to do with your business, your industry, or your work.
Yeah, it's healthy. So I did promise we were going to get to all the fun. There's been a few fun and crazy things in the news this week. Should we start with Tucker? Because why not? Yeah. So for those of you who didn't see this week, Tucker Carlson, we'll add in Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham, the three amigos. It turns out, based on text messages and emails, that when they were spreading lies about the outcome of the 2020 election, they didn't actually believe it. Shocking. Now, as you were reading this, what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, it was refreshing to know that Tucker Carlson also hates Donald Trump. You know,
Yeah,
I was like,
it was like,
oh, so you are a human being with a brain. So then why do you behave this way? You know, I don't understand the agreement that they have. And who put them to the task of this? It's all about the GOP, like no matter who's in charge? I mean, I take a lot of pride in saying that I don't think Democrats are all about whoever's in. We wouldn't let somebody like that run the show. So the fact that they are anti-Trump or hate him as much as we do was a nice surprise. You know?
Or when they said, this is insane. You know, these people are insane who are spreading these things. You're like, maybe they're more sane than we think. Do I feel good about that? Do I feel bad about that? I had mixed emotions.
I did too. It was almost like finding out you hate somebody a little bit less.
Yeah.
But there's still no excuse for that kind of behavior. There's still no excuse for Fox News. I mean, there's still no excuse for spreading disinformation to, you know, en masse. Disinformation, why would that be your business?
I know.
Why would that be your business? To lie, cheat, and steal.
Yeah, that's basically it. Now, what's also amazing about this story is that, so there's this $1.6 billion lawsuit that Dominion Voting Systems is filed against Fox News. So lots of money is at stake here. We found out they were lying. This week, Tucker Carlson still went out and spread disinformation again about January 6th. I can't even imagine what the Fox lawyers were thinking. I mean, it was just, so he's like double down. He's doubling down. He doesn't even care. I know,
and he knows those text messages are out there. So like, what does he have to say about that? What's his retort? Because nobody interviews him.
No, I know. Tucker, if you're here, we have some questions.
Tucker,
Come
if you're
on
here
up.
at South by Southwest,
Come
I know
on.
this is your jam.
Tucker Carlson at South by Southwest.
He came down to listen to music. He's like, which bands can I see?
You're right. I'm going to come to this and I'm going to hear them talk about abortion. It's going to be amazing. So the other thing, because it's not just Fox that there's a lot of cuckoo for crazy going on. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's always a safe place to go on the cuckoo for crazy. This week, we also learned that she's going to go visit insurrectionists in jail. That's right. She's going to go visit them in jail. So what do we think those conversations are going to be like?
First of all, she should just wait until she's in jail, and then she can talk to them then. But I find all of these people to be parodies of what they're trying to be. Like, even Tucker Carlson, I had a little kerfuffle with him a couple weeks ago, a pretty public one. But
I like you a little kerfuffle. Tell us what happened.
Well, I made a very silly video when I was hosting The Daily Show for the week about childless women and like what we get to do in a day. And it was like a video of me flying off to Paris for lunch and then going to Machu Picchu, you know, to do a quick hike. And I
was like
stupid.
Wiping my son's butt, like very jealous.
Right. Well, you made your bed, and I made
my bed.
And of course, you know, he had some right-wing lunatic on there talking about, I mean, the opening of the conversation was something like, if you've ever seen a woman back up a car, you know that they're not as capable as men are. It was like a parody of misogyny. Like, that's not even real misogyny anymore. You know, that's from like 1950.
Do you remember the guy who said that women should hold an aspirin between their legs? Does anybody remember this?
No, what was
that? As
that?
like a form of birth control or something? I can't even remember. Look it up. It's crazy. Okay, continue.
So I find Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos and Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, they're like parodies of what they're caricatures of what, you know, because they don't even believe what they're saying, as we just figured out with all these text messages. They don't even believe what they're saying. They're just saying this shit. It's like dog whistling, you know? And it's very old. Like, it's very not modern. And so I find it to be less of a threat because it's become like a satire.
Yeah. Do you think it's just fear of losing voters, though, and they just like don't want to lose their TV shows, or what else is the motivation?
I guess. I mean, I don't know what their motivation could be because you've been caught out. Like, and I guess people who watch Fox don't want to listen to bad information that doesn't agree with their line of thinking. Just like they got mad when they called the election for Arizona,
Right.
Fox News watchers were like, we don't like this, we have to turn it off. It's like, yeah, I didn't like certain states being called for Republicans either, but I don't turn off MSNBC because I'm trying to get fucking information, I don't know what they believe. I don't believe Marjorie Taylor Greene knows what she's talking about, as she's proven time and time again. I think she likes the spotlight, she likes the attention, and she's saying whatever she can to dog whistle and stoke fires and stoke racism and sexism and all of it. So it's hard to really get into these people's brains, nor do I care to even really understand. You know what I mean?
It's hard, it's dark.
Yeah.
Better to meditate and have a good juice than get into their brains. So the other big piece of news on the right this week was reports yesterday that Trump, after all these legal cases, just to kind of catch everyone up here, in case you haven't, it's hard to track all these legal cases against him. So we have a special counsel investigation into an insurrection, hoarding of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, a criminal investigation into election interference in Georgia. That's the other three. And now it turns out, according to reports yesterday, that the first indictment might be because of hush money paid to an adult film star, which feels like the most Trumpian version of this story. But tell us, what do you think is going on there? What's your reaction to all of this movement of Trump stuff and him back on the scene, actually?
Well, maybe you can address this when you start your show, Jen, because you're at MSNBC, and I came to my hotel room last night, and I turned on MSNBC, and they were discussing this, and that Trump, that it looks like since the district attorney's office reached out to them, that there's a good chance there's an indictment coming. And then there were three people on, panelists, talking about if there's going to be an indictment or if there's not going to be an indictment. And the first guy said, one of two things could happen.
There could be or there could not be.
Yeah, and I'm like, you guys, please stop having these circular conversations that mean nothing. It means nothing. It's such speculation and conjecture. And it's like you want to, instead of everyone's opinions about what possibly could be happening, I think it's of more import to talk about what is happening.
Yeah.
When that indictment comes down, if it comes down, great. Then we can discuss it. But this may or may not happen seems to be the crux of a lot of these shows, a lot of these news formats, because I understand it's a business and it's turned into a 24-hour business. So they have to, supply their viewers with these kinds of conversations. But it's very stupid to watch that, I mean, you just can't sit there talking about something that may or may not happen for that long.
Yeah.
And every hour it's the next hour and then the next hour and they pick up where they left off. So I would just like to have more constructive conversations.
Listen, I mean, what we're hoping to do, what I'm curious
more
about.
Personal stuff like what you're talking about
Yeah.
too. That's interesting. I want to know what people are doing in their free time, what kind of shit they're into.
Yeah.
He's buying records,
Vinyl records, it's cool. No, one of the things I wonder about on this is I have a hard time, and I follow this closely, keeping up with all of the lawsuits here. So to me, what I really want is like a big whiteboard that's like lawsuit 1, lawsuit 2, lawsuit 3, lawsuit 4. Here's what I know. We don't know yet if he's going to be indicted. Here's where everything else is. But we're going to do a lot of explaining. That's our hope.
Oh, good.
I want people to be able to go text their girlfriends and be like, okay, I understand. There's 4 lawsuits. Here's the status of them.
Yeah, and also some fresh faces. I don't understand how some of these people can still talk about this garbage like 8 years later. These correspondents that are on, it's like, you need a break. They need to go on a hiatus and refresh, because it's not good for any of us to constantly be belaboring what ifs. That's
Fair.
my phone. I have to go.
Yeah. Just somebody's calling her. Who knows? It's Tucker Carlson, maybe. Who knows? Maybe he's calling you.
I have a Tucker block on my phone.
Now, on a lighter Republican note, people in here might be surprised to know that you have a thing for Mitt Romney a little bit. I don't know if that's safe to say. You could call it a crush. You could, I don't know. You describe it.
I'm sexually attracted to him.
Okay, fair.
Only because he has a backbone and he stands up for things,
And good hair.
And I appreciate that. I can even forget about the Mormon aspect of things for a short period of time, but he seems like a real person who I liked when he went off on George Santos and kind of yelled at him in the chamber the other day or a few weeks ago. I liked that. I liked a couple of things that Mitt Romney has done, and I'm always looking for a Republican to be attracted to, you know? I just want them to throw us a bone of like, you're a human being. I mean, come on, stand up for something.
I mean, I want Mitt Romney to be your one and only, but are there other Republicans you're attracted to for other reasons? Or maybe you're sexually attracted to them. I don't know. You tell us.
I was attracted to Robert Mueller until that investigation came up empty-handed. I was attracted to him during the investigation.
That was a buzzkill for you.
I was like, this guy's going to bring it home for all of us, you know? I had fantasies about Trump just being removed from the White House in his underwear and his tighty whities and his toupee flying off and landing in the Rose Garden. I was like, when is this going to happen? And then it didn't happen. And then I broke up with Robert Mueller.
Does he know? Did you tell him or you're telling him now?
I'm pretty sure he does know, actually. I've heard from a couple of people. I was pretty public about it. When I have a crush, I go all in.
So Mitt Romney, what could he do that would make you break up with him? Anything he needs to be worried about?
Well, there's a lot that can make me, I mean, he's got me on the hook. You know what I mean? If he could keep delivering and keep calling out, like there's a level of decorum, obviously, that he has that seems to be devoid in the Republican Party for the most part. So I don't know. I can't give a specific about what he'd have to do, but like, it feels like there are a few guys in there that seem to still have a moral compass about things. And I respect that.
Yeah. So do you think that there's a way back to normal on the Republican side? Or do you think it's been taken over by Marjorie Taylor Greene and that cohort?
I don't know. I'm not really a political analyst. I would like to think that, you know, when there's a big push in one direction, it comes back around, and that this isn't for very long. These types of people, Matt Gaetzes of the world and Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos and whatever, you know, all of them. I hope that humanity is better than that. I mean, sometimes I get very scared. You know, Trump's running again in 2024. We can say he won't win, but we said that last time, and that scares me. I hate that. I hate the feeling that people had the day that happened, when you woke up in this country and understood that that person, a reality show contestant, became the president of the United States after saying the things that he said. That makes me also worry about humanity on the other side of the coin.
Yeah, I remember the day after he was elected, and I was working for Obama in the White House. I was bawling, crying like the whole day. There's also like this terrible photo of me where I look like I'm going to kill somebody, that is from the Rose Garden the next day. But it felt like, how could people ignore everything and still vote for him? It was like, how could everybody, not everybody, but the majority of the country ignore the sexism, the racism, all of the things? It felt a little bit like a punch in the gut at the time. I still remember that.
Yeah, plenty of people I trusted, like people who were in politics, were like, don't worry, you know, Trump's, you know, they're never going to get overturned Roe v. Wade. Trump is pro-choice. And I was like, he doesn't know what he is, you know? He's whatever he has to be to win an election. And now look where we are. So a lot of those people who were so confident about what would happen during a Trump presidency were wrong. And it was hell. It was dark and ominous, and I don't want to go back there. So I have, you know, mixed feelings about all of it. I don't want to not live in this country. I love this country. And
unless you lived in Whistler, maybe.
Well, I mean, that's why I bought my house in Whistler. It was right before the 2020 election. I actually bought it on FaceTime because I was so worried that he could win that I was like, I can't do another 4 years of this. Like, I'd rather just move to Canada and become a ski instructor.
Sounds pretty good. And read good books.
Yeah, I get a lot of reading done in Whistler.
Good books. Now, the other big character is, of course, Ron DeSantis. Have you been watching him or watching what he's up to?
Yeah.
Culture warrior. What's your thoughts on him?
Well, what do you think? I mean, he's pretty disgusting. Another dog whistler, you know, another, like, this is for this to stoke this Republican right-wing MAGA party. Like, oh, we're going to discriminate, no trans here. For a party that prides itself, or used to be one of the, you know, main tenets of being a Republican was less governmental interference. It's really so hypocritical and ironic that now they want to control women's bodies, trans bodies. What I have to say about trans people is, like, first of all, Do you think that's fucking easy to do? Do you think that's easy for anyone to make that kind of decision? And why does anyone care what anyone else is doing to their body? These people aren't attacking anyone. They're just living their lives. And I don't understand the political involvement with people telling us that we can have a baby, or they're going to force us to have a baby, and they're scared of what trans people are going to do to little children, or drag queens are going to do to little children. But when children get shot in classrooms, that's not a problem that they need to solve. So don't pretend you care about children. You don't.
Yeah. It's also, as you just said, why is that the hill people need to die on? I mean, how is it impacting you if somebody was born a boy and they know they are a girl, or vice versa? Why you? Why does that matter to you, how they're living their life? That's a hard one for me to understand.
Absolutely, and that's why I don't believe it's even about that. It's about, the Christian right, and Christianity's not about that. I read the Bible once. It was so, I couldn't read it. I read the
whole thing?
I read the Book of Mormon too, as a shout out to Mitt. And
yeah,
I read the Bible.
That's
the whole
commitment
thing.
right there to your
Well,
Romney.
my mom was a Mormon, and so I didn't find out my mom was Mormon because we were all raised Jewish. And when my brother died, he was a teenager, and it was a terrible accident. They were planning the funeral, and my rabbi was in the kitchen with my parents, and he was talking to my dad about my mom having to convert to Judaism to be buried in the same cemetery as my brother. And I had grown up. I was 9 years old. I thought my mom was Jewish. Like, we went to temple on Friday nights. She got on the bima. She spoke Hebrew, and I was like, "Wait, you're not Jewish?" And my dad's like, "Never mind that. We have to deal with the funeral." And I was like, "Well, what are you?" And he's like, "Don't ask that either. You're not going to like the answer." And so when I found out my mom was Mormon, I did read the Book of Mormon. And then I slammed the book down. I was 10 years old. I was like, "This is ridiculous."
You're like, "That's not for me."
Mom, you have got to be joking me. Like, are you seriously going to follow this? Somebody just wrote this, just like somebody just wrote the Bible. I mean, I respect people's, if people want to be religious, great, go for it. But don't bring me down, I'm not coming with you.
There's a lot unpacked there.
And try and make it seem believable a little bit.
There you go. Are you a person do you go to church now? Are you a faithful person now?
No, I don't have time for religion. I think religion is really the basis of it is historically the basis of all war and pillage. And, it's just, no, religion is not for me.
So back to our favorite culture warrior, Ron DeSantis. What is you've watched these people, you've commented. I know you're not a political commentator, but you observe them. You give us a lot of good humor about them. What's your take on Trump or DeSantis? Who's the lead pony for you of those two?
I think the Republican Party will try to grab onto let's call him Rob DeSantis.
Ron.
I think they will try to grab onto him because he's more easily directed, right? Like, they can control him, and he's just basically trying to appeal to the GOP anyway. So that's a more reliable option for them. Trump is unpredictable and unreliable, and I don't think any of them want to deal with that again. I do think, though, that, Trump did this. I mean, he can chew him up and spit him out. He's done it before, and that there's a good chance he'll do it again. And when Trump is the last man standing, then the GOP has a decision to make, and it will be, let's get behind him again. So I don't know that Ron DeSantis has what it takes to out-Trump Trump, and I don't know that I want him to, but I think if I had to choose between Ron DeSantis and Trump, I don't know. I guess Ron DeSantis. I mean, Trump is just too crazy, and Ron DeSantis seems a little bit more, he seems less unhinged. And that's my endorsement for Rob DeSantis, everybody.
Rob DeSantis, you heard it right here.
Yeah,
she's ready to go on the road with you with her pin there.
Yeah, but bands off our bodies. Pin.
Exactly. So you have done a lot in your life already. I mean, you have had many best-selling books. I'm going to miss some things here. Netflix specials, great comedy shows. You just guest hosted The Daily Show. What do you have left you want to do?
I guess have a baby. I have to have a baby and get married next.
To really define yourself.
I'm 48, so that's going to be an interesting baby. But yeah, to really define myself. I don't know. I never have a real game plan. I just kind of go where the action is. And when I feel the action, when I'm attracted to something, you know, I try not to put too much pressure on myself. I don't have like a 5-year plan. But
Me neither. They're the worst.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like, you know, even a vision board. I don't have that. I'm just.
I barely know what that is. It's like when you cut things out. Yeah, that's
yeah,
okay.
and you put them up, and you're like, I want to be on Oprah one day.
Yeah.
I think I will probably get back into hosting, you know, a talk show sooner than later. Those are the conversations I'm having right now. I'm going back on tour. I'm writing another book. So all of those things will just they all kind of feed each other. You know, my stand-up is like my books, and my books feed my stand-up, and my TV shows. All of it kind of goes together. And I just really like sticking up for women. And, you know, I like being a voice for people to know, like, you belong here. Every single person belongs here, not just women. Any marginalized person who's not seen or heard. It's very big passion of mine to make sure that they feel seen and that they feel heard and that their opinions matter to somebody, because there's really nothing worse than seeing people who don't see their own value. And that's going around in this country, especially with politics. It's diminishing people's value. And not everybody has a big support system. You know, a lot of people are really lonely and are alone. So it's important for me to recognize those people and do as much put as much out there that could make people feel heard, seen, and included as possible.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to your tour. So now, when you were doing tours 10 or 15 years ago, or maybe longer, you tell me, you did a lot of you made fun of a lot of celebrities early on in your career. Now you've talked a lot more about politics and politicians. How did that transition? What prompted that transition for you?
Well, because politics weren't really a problem for me until Trump became elected. You know, like I thought everything was fine and I didn't have to involve myself in that.
Yeah,
because
that's happening over here.
That's what the adults are taking care of.
I'm going to talk about celebrities.
I'm going to make fun
great.
of Lindsay Lohan. You know, you guys handle the president, and then I'll do this. But when that happened, I couldn't help myself because I just felt like, you know, on a value basis, that it was not acceptable at all. Yeah, and also that's out of style too, making fun of celebrities. Look at what happened to these poor girls because everybody was making fun of them. That's not nice. That's not how I want to leave this world, doing stuff like that. And everything is an evolution. You learn as you grow. And it's the same conversations we're having around cancel culture and men complaining about it. And this is so annoying. It's not annoying for us too. It's so annoying. No one wants to continue to have this ongoing 5-year conversation. It's like, let's fast forward to the next bit where we all can respect each other's desires and not discriminate in our humor, like, or lambaste people who are already being targeted. I just don't see the benefit of that at all. I don't think it's necessary to be able to, when people say, I can't say anything I want to say, it's like, what do you want to say? What do you want to say that you can't say?
Do you feel like you've had to be more careful as, you know,
I welcome that. I welcome the parameters. Thank you for giving me guidelines. Now I can be more clever. If you're out of material when you can't make fun of people, then you're out of material.
Yeah. Do you think are there bars that you would have crossed 10 years ago that you wouldn't cross now?
Yeah, absolutely. Making fun of people and, you know, people who have a problem with drugs or people who have a problem with whatever their issues are. It's easy to kind of have a magnetic attraction to the underdog in a negative way. And I learned that I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want anyone to feel that way. I want them to know they can come to me, or I'm your ally, not I'm your enemy and I'm going to tear you apart. I'll save that for Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. What is Tucker Carlson going to be mentioned in your upcoming show? What can we know about your show that's coming up?
Oh, it's called Little Big Bitch, and it's about the premise of my whole next tour is what I was like as a kid. And there's a story of when I was 10 years old. I flew with my mom and my 2 sisters to visit my grandparents in California. And I had never flown on a plane before. And so we got on the plane and I saw the first class section and I was like, oh, who are these people? You know, these seem like my group. And my mom's like, no, honey, we're never flying first class. We have 6 children in our family. Like, that is never going to happen. And I was like, speak for yourself. And I came home from that trip, and I was determined. I was 10 years old at the time, but I always looked like I was older than I was. So I started a babysitting company and lied and said I was 15.
An entrepreneur,
Yeah, I was
really,
an entrepreneur. So I said I was 15, and I ended up babysitting for a 14-year-old kid all summer long. I was putting him in timeouts. Like, I was like, no, you need to go to your room now. And I was 4 years younger than him. And I had like a babysitting empire. But my sister's like, can I work for you? I'm like, you're not experienced enough. And at the end of that summer, I had saved $3,500.
It's pretty good.
And my mom was planning another trip to California. So by the time that was all done, I think I was 13 years old when she went on the next trip. And I went down the street to a neighbor who was a travel agent, and I got my first class ticket. And we got back on the plane, and this time it was my 2 sisters and my mom, and we walked on the plane, and I saw my seat 2A, and I was like, I'll see you guys at the end of the flight. Yeah. And I don't think I've flown coach since then. So that was the premise of this whole tour, is all the things I did when I was a kid. I was like, this is great. The guy next to me, I was excited I was going to order lobster. You know? I didn't know what was in store
What's
for me.
on the menu?
In first class. But yeah, so that's pretty much, I came out like that, very interested in living the life I wanted to lead, and not just in a material way. I mean, it probably started out that way because my dad was a used car salesman, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to work for me. And my mom said when I was 3, I said, do I have a dowry? Like, what's the deal? Yeah. Do you guys have a savings account? There's 6 children. We're all going to need to go to college. Like, what is the plan here? So it's a lot of stories like that, and it'll be fun because, it was the 80s. So there's a lot of fun nostalgia.
We were
wrapped
just
up in that.
drinking Tang, and we were out of our houses for 16 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're all still here to live to tell the tale.
Yeah, well, you might have been drinking Tang, but I was probably drinking Belvedere when I was that age. Belvedere with a splash of Tang.
You probably have more fun then, maybe.
Yeah.
So for your return to late night, since you give us a little hint at that, when can we expect that? Will it be daily? When's something going to happen on that front?
Well, we're in discussions about a couple of different options, and it's just about me finding the right fit and making sure that it works for me and that it's something that I'm going to want to do for a long period of time, because when you sign up for a show like that, you've really got to be committed to, a lot of time, like 7 to 10 years. And that's a big commitment for me because I like to move around and jump around. So I'm just trying to be very thoughtful about it. So there's no announcement to be made yet, no.
Okay. If you do that, can we expect some more political commentary
Oh, yeah,
like we saw?
Of course.
And are there any characters that you're kind of hoping will still be around in the next couple of years for you to kind of have as fodder? Aside from Mitt Romney, of course, different kind of fodder.
I mean, I feel like there are, I wouldn't want to be so selfish in hoping that Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos are still around just for the the purpose of me to make fun of, because that's ridiculous. There are plenty of people to make fun of. I don't need those two. But, hopefully they'll still be alive living somewhere and we can find them and make fun of them there. They don't need to
wherever
be in
they
Congress.
may be.
Yeah, wherever. We'll go where you are.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll look forward to it. Now, are there Democrats that you like to make fun of? Do you have favorite Democrats that you poke fun at, or you're working on some material about that we can look forward to?
Oh, well, no, I'm not working on any material, but of course there are Democrats to be made fun of. I mean, Joe Biden, you can make fun of him, Nancy Pelosi, all of them, there's something funny about everybody. There's humor in everything. And that's one of the joys of being a comedian, is to take serious fare and lighten it up. And I think the idea of not taking yourself so seriously as a human being is a great elixir for everybody, to not be so serious about how you come across or how you're perceived, or being so sensitive about every little thing. I think we should just be living out loud a little bit more. And I like to get that messaging out there. I like when women come up and they're like, you've made me free. If something happened to you, I remember my first book I wrote was called My Horizontal Life, a collection of one-night stands. And how many women were like, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking about this. I'm like, it's ridiculous.
And now I can talk about it.
Yeah,
They feel that way.
and you realize you're giving a license when you do something creative. You're giving license to a group of people. It could be a small group or it could be a huge swath of the population, but there's a lot of meaning in that. And so what do you want to do with that power that you have? How do you want to steer people? And I want to steer people towards love and joy and happiness and silliness, and let's party. Like, let's have a good time.
Let's have a Belvedere.
Yeah, Belvedere with a splash of Tang.
That sounds weird, but yeah, sure.
With Bob DeSantis.
With Bob DeSantis, who you endorsed today. So for anyone who's watching or people who are in the room here who want to be Chelsea Handler one day, or a version of you, I mean, what advice would you have for them? Or what have you learned over the past 20 years you wish you knew?
I've learned that nothing's permanent. Everything is temporary. Your emotions, your job, your relationships, everything is in flux all the time. And the minute you understand that, the minute life becomes easier. When you don't hold on to things that didn't work out for you, the sooner they disappear and a new opportunity comes your way. And that every hard experience you go through is just before something sensational happens. And that I know to be true.
That is opening the door. That is a perfect way to end our conversation. Chelsea Handler, thank you. This has been the most fun. Hope everybody here had fun, and I love getting to know you better.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.